How's it going, you guys, and welcome to Morning Cup. We started off with the Doomsday Clock. Now, the Doomsday Clock has been prevalent across our history. It's been closer to midnight with the Russian and Cold War. It's been closer to midnight with the North Korean scenario. And it's always been closer with the scale of the world being what it is. But it's officially stopped at 100 seconds to midnight, considering the fact that the COVID pandemic, climate change, and nuclear war is always prevalent. Now, this is the closest that it's ever been to midnight, and if it ever does hit midnight, we can rest assured, best believe that it's not gonna go well for us. Of course, it's called the Doomsday Clock for a reason. Now, the fact of the matter is, the essence of the Doomsday Clock is one that is globally acclaimed as well as criticized for even existing. But to be aware and be in the know-how of how much time we actually have and how close we are on numerous instances to losing it all is rather humbling, for lack of a better term. We move on to the fact that Indonesia's volcano Mount Merapi has erupted yet again. Now, this eruption is rather devastating and it has left a huge trail of lava spewing down. Now, people surrounding the eruption zone have been asked to return back to their homes. No work is being done, but no evacuation orders are in place as well. Now, Indonesia has faced a massive array of natural disasters in the past few weeks. As a matter of fact, the past month has not been great for Indonesia. But natural disaster after natural disaster just dictates the fact that unpredictability is still a factor. And no matter how many geological zones or how many geological units that you might have in place, it's still very hard to predict exact eruption dates, times, locations, and what is to follow. We move on to the fact that the Biden presidency has now officially made a first landmark move. And what this landmark move is the fact that it has frozen the UAE arms and jet deal that was signed in by Trump. Now, we all remember the big famous interview with Donald Trump sitting right next to Mohammed bin Salman from the UAE and, well, writing off $100 billion, $500 billion, $25 billion, $50 billion. These are all chump change for you. That remarkable interview, I'm sure you all remember that. Now, it turns out that numerous humanitarian organizations as well as the UN has dictated the fact that these arms deals that were being done by the United States with the UAE would directly result in the fact that the UAE would use these arms to suppress them. They would use these arms to attack countries that had nothing that they could retaliate with, that they had nothing that they could protect themselves with. And these high-end weaponry that was just being bought out of the shells of the United States with no concern as to where they would eventually be used and where United States made weaponry would be used. Well, it turns out that now it's time for accountability. Now Donald Trump signed on to a bunch of deals like this, but the Biden presidency has frozen all movement of such arms as well as airplanes. Now it's going to review these deals very, very carefully under the thin microscope, if you will, and try to figure out as to where exactly these weapons and what these weapons would be used for. If it's for national security, it's all well and good. But if it's to go overseas, to cross your nation's boundaries, and go and spread fear in the hearts of surrounding nations, dictating the fact that you have military might because you bought that, I don't understand if that's ever going to be credible enough for anyone to even remotely be okay with. We move on to the fun story of the day, and the fun story of the day is, well, kind of an interesting one. Now, Bill Gates officially puts out a letter. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as we all know, has been prevalent for a while. They fought malaria, they fought polio, they've done a lot of good for the world. But now this letter that Bill Gates put out states that we as a civilization should be preparing for the next pandemic as if it was a war, as if we were going to war as a civilization, which is rather concerning. Now the right-wing media has a field day with this because they've been saying this for the longest time, that Bill Gates is this, Bill Gates is that, Bill Gates is the devil, Bill Gates is trying to win over the world and then use the world as his own, well, personal sandbox. But turns out that Bill Gates has officially said that we have to prepare for the next pandemic as if it was a war, as if we were going to war, as if resources were going to be grim, as if living conditions were going to be worse, and as if nothing was going to be predictable. Well, in some way, shape, or form, that makes absolute sense considering the fact that the direction of the pandemic is anyone's guess. And how long it's actually going to take for us to be out of the coronavirus pandemic is anyone's guess. But the fact that we have to prepare for war as a war is coming, it's a little concerning, if you ask me. Now, Bill Gates could have phrased this better instead of saying prepare for war and pandering straight into the hands of the right wing media that's gonna spin this in a billion ways. Just goes to show that even the smartest man in the world, if you will, the richest man once was, can have a few slip ups every once in a while. That being said, we have to be prepared, we have to always be prepared. Considering how these lockdowns affected our day to day lives, it doesn't hurt to be prepped. And preppers everywhere, especially in the United States, were more than happy to dig into their resources that they had sustained for so long, to dig into their bunker bases, to dig into their off the city line warehouses, all of that. The fact of the matter is that if you don't have a bunker, if you don't have a bug out location, you're pretty much screwed. If everything goes to heck and the sun comes falling down someday, there's nothing that can be done. But be prepared. Because if the supermarkets run dry and your resources are still anyone's guess as to where you're actually going to get them, you are going to be, at the end of the day, directly affected by whatever happens on a global scale. And to protect yourself from that, make sure you take preemptive measures. Alright, with that being said, this has been your morning cup. See you tomorrow. Thank you.